Boker Tov, Shalom Aleichem. Once again, Mikael here. This is May 7th, 2014 on ER 7 of 5999. Pray this finds you all well, in good spirits, and health, a sound mind, as I give thanks and praises to the Most High for those gifts, for being well, to have a sound mind, and to have health and good spirits. So today, it's pretty much a doozy. Today we have a doozy. We're going to uncover perhaps one of the greatest secrets that there are, or that there is in existence, and look at some of the infrastructure of this world and this satanic kingdom that has been going about controlling matters as a unit since about 1913. Well, maybe even 1790, but in force about 1913. Okay, so that's when this has really come together, and its beginnings began in 1790ish. Okay. So first, just have a spirit of prayer, and then we'll get into a spirit of prayer as we invoke Yah's presence to be with us. So blessed are you, Yah, Almighty One, King of the universe, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Come before you, Abba, asking for your mercy and your compassion to be upon this your servant. Have mercy and forgive me for my sins, Abba Yah, so that I may stand before you and not have any guilt of conscience, but to be clear and free, Heavenly Father. Circumcise my heart. Open my eyes to the wonders of your Torah, so I may truly understand that which you have shown to your servant to share, Heavenly Father. So I ask that you, at this time, remove any distraction, any hindrance, or any obstacle that would cause your word to become diluted. But please, Abba, just lift up your spirit within me, so I may proclaim with boldness and without any shame, Abba. And I pray these things not because I'm worthy, but I pray these things in the name of the high priest, the king, the prophet, the rabbi, the bridegroom, and the Messiah who is in my life, who I proclaim as Yahushua, Baruch Hashem, hallelujah, and amen. So today's lesson is entitled The Empire of the City. And we're going to study what is called the empire of the city and see why it is called as such. But before we begin, I want to open up with some scripture. And we're going to start with the book of 2nd Esdras, or 2nd Ezra. This is the apocryphal book written in the 1st century by a Palestinian Yahudi, or Yahudi in the land of Israel. And so this is his 5th vision. It composes about 7 visions, but this is his 5th vision, the entire book of 2nd Ezra. But this is his 5th vision. This is the 11th chapter. It reads as follows. It says, on the 2nd night I had a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle that had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. Keep that number in mind. And I looked, and behold, he spread his wings over all the earth. And all the winds of heaven blew upon him, and the clouds were gathered about him. And I looked, and out of his wings there grew opposing wings, but they became little, puny wings. But his heads were at rest. The middle head was larger than the other heads, and it also was at rest with them. And I looked, and behold, the eagle flew with his wings to reign over the earth and over those who dwell in it. And I saw how all things under heaven were subjected to him, and no one spoke against him, not even one creature that was on the earth. And I looked, and behold, the eagle rose upon his talons, and uttered a cry to his wings, saying, Do not all watch at the same time. Let each sleep in his own place, and watch in his turn. But let the heads be reserved for the last. Okay. And I looked, and behold, a voice did not come from his heads, but from the midst of his body. And I counted his opposing wings, and behold, there were 8 of them. And I looked, and behold, on the right side 1 wing arose, and it reigned over all the earth. And while it was raining, it came to its end and disappeared, so that its place was not seen. Then the next wing arose and reigned, and it continued to reign a long time. And while it was raining, its end came also, so that it disappeared like the first. And behold, a voice, it sounded, saying to it, Hear me, you who have ruled the earth all this time. I announce this to you before you disappear. After you, no one shall rule as long as you, or even half as long. Then the third wing raised itself up, and held the rule like the former ones, and it also disappeared. And so it went with all the wings. They wielded power one after another, and then were never seen again. And I looked, and behold, in due course, the wings that followed also rose up on the right side in order to rule. There were some of them that ruled, yet disappeared suddenly, and others of them rose up, but did not hold the rule. And after this I looked, and behold, the 12 wings and the 2 little wings disappeared, and nothing remained on the eagle's body except 3 heads that were at rest, and 6 little wings. And I looked, and behold, 2 little wings separated from the 6, and remained under the head that was on the right side, but 4 remained in their place. And I looked, and behold, these little wings planned to set themselves up and hold the rule. And I looked, and behold, one was set up, but suddenly disappeared, a second also, and this disappeared more quickly than the first. And I remained, and behold, the 2 that were remaining planned between themselves to reign together. And while they were planning, behold, one of the heads that were at rest, the one that was in the middle, awoke, for it was greater than the other 2 heads. And I saw how it allied the 2 heads with itself, and behold, the head turned with those that were with it, and it devoured the 2 little wings, which were planning to reign. Moreover, this head gained control of the whole earth, and with much oppression dominated its inhabitants, and it had great power over the world than all the wings that had gone before. And after this I looked, and behold, the middle head also suddenly disappeared, just as the wings that had done. But the 2 heads remained, which also ruled over the earth and its inhabitants. And I looked, and behold, the head on the right side devoured the one on the left. Then I heard a voice saying to me, Look before you and consider what you see. This goes into the vision of the lion, and I'm not going to really read that, but that was 2 Ezra 11, 1 through 35. I'm going to pause there. And this lion, we'll probably get to that lion teaching a little bit later. But let's understand, this is the interpretation of the eagle. This is 12, starting at verse 7. And I said, O sovereign master, if I have found favor in thy sight, this is 12th chapter, 7th verse, and if I have been accounted righteous before thee, before many others, beyond many others, and if my prayer has indeed come up before thy face, strengthen me and show me, thy servant, the interpretation and meaning of this terrible vision, that thou mayest fully comfort my soul. For thou hast judged me worthy to be shown the end of the times and the last events of the times. He said to me, This is the interpretation of this vision which you have seen. The eagle which you saw coming up from the sea is the 4th kingdom, which appeared in a vision to your brother Daniel. Now again, the 4th kingdom is the Roman Empire. Okay, so this is a vision about the Roman Empire. But it was not explained to him as I now explain or have explained it to you. Behold, the days are coming when a kingdom shall arise on earth, and it shall be more terrifying than all the kingdoms that have been before it. And another 12 kings, and 12 kings shall reign in it, one after another. But the second that is to reign shall hold sway for a longer time than any other of the 12. This is the interpretation of the 12 wings which you have saw. So there will be 12 successive kingdoms, in which the second one is to be the most effective one, okay? And if you're familiar with the First Reich, that was the longest reign that took place under Charlotte, beginning with Charlemagne, then moving into pretty much the Middle Ages. And the 12 kings shall reign after it, one after another, but the second that is to reign shall hold sway for a longer time than any other of the 12. This is the interpretation of the 12 wings which you saw. As for you hearing a voice that spoke, coming not from the eagle's heads, but from the midst of the body, this is the interpretation. In the midst of the time of that kingdom, great struggles shall arise, and it shall be in danger of falling. Nevertheless, it shall not fall then, but shall regain its former power. Okay, so this is like the mortal wound being healed, okay, with general birth the air, because if you look at the history of the church, it had always suffered some struggle, okay, always. And then it received its deadly wound in about 1789, 98, around there, General Berthier. We talked about this as well in some previous lessons. But the mortal wound was healed with Benito Mussolini in the Lateran Treaty, okay? And it's being healed now. And we're seeing the world, particularly now, just marvel after this beast with Jorge Bergoglio as the Pope. And just he's gained so much favor and so much fanfare the world over with his cunningness. So as for you seeing eight little wings clinging to his wings, this is the interpretation. 8 kings shall arise in it, whose time shall be short and their years swift. And 2 of them shall perish when the middle of its time draws near, and 4 shall be kept for the time when its end approaches, but 2 shall be kept unto the end. So there's 2 popes right now, okay? You're seeing Benedict and you're seeing Francis, the popes, okay? As for you seeing 3 heads at rest, this is the interpretation. In its last days, the Most High will raise up 3 kings, okay? So these kings will get to them, and they shall renew many things, and shall rule the earth and its inhabitants more oppressively than all who were before them. Therefore, they are called the heads of the eagle, okay? The heads of the Roman Empire, which is what we're going to study today. For it is they who shall sum up his wickedness and perform his last actions. As for your seeing that the large head disappeared, one of the kings shall die in his bed, but in agonies. But as for the 2 who remain, the sword shall devour them. For the sword of one shall devour him who was with him, but he shall also fall by the sword in the last days. As for your seeing 2 little wings passing over to the head, which was on the right side, this is the interpretation. It is these whom the Most High has kept for the eagle's end. This was the reign which was brief and full of tumult, as you have seen. So we identified 3 heads, which are crucial to understand in relationship to this study today, which is called the Empire of the City. That city being none other than Vatican City, okay? And they're going to see who else is composing, because that's the middle head, okay? That's the middle head. We're going to see who these other 2 heads are. Got a couple of articles, 3 articles as a matter of fact, not a couple, so a few articles, 3 articles that we're going to read. One was printed on September 15th, 2012, which is called Empire of the City States, which is a city-state. A city-state, you have to know, is a sovereign, independent nation within a nation, okay? It's a district. It's an unincorporated area that is a part of a nation, a city-state. So this is the Crown, which deals with London City. And then you have Washington, D.C., of course, which is the District of Columbia. And then you have the Vatican, which is Vatican City. All of these are city-states and are not a part of the countries which they are found in. And we'll get into that. So the Empire of the City consists of 3 cities, which belong to no nation or state and pay no taxes. Vatican City, the city of London, which is inside London proper, and Washington, D.C. So Vatican City controls the world through religion, the city of London controls the world through currency, and D.C. controls the world through force. The city of London, or the square mile, is a plot of land approximately a square mile in London. It is independent from England and is ruled by the City of London Corporation, and we'll get into this some more. Located in the center of each city is an Egyptian obelisk, erect. They are the obelisk in St. Peter's Square, the Washington Monument, and Cleopatra's Needle in the city of London. Of course, One question you might want to ask yourself is, why is there an Egyptian obelisk, which is an attribute to the Egyptian pagan sun god Amun-Ra, in the middle of Vatican City? Contained within these three cities is more than 80% of the world's wealth. Now, you have to understand, Mystery Babylon is a amalgamation of all these mystery religions. Okay, so from the Egyptian mysteries, the Babylonian mysteries, the Mithraic or the Mithras, the mysteries of Mithras or Ahura Mazda, all of these mysteries have been converged in Babylon, the fourth empire, which is like no other. Okay, they have fused or syncretized all of these mystery religions into one, and have pretty much been the universal whore that it is. This is what Catholic means, universal. And so the whore is nothing more than someone who is an idolater, spiritual idolater, commits spiritual adultery against the one true and living creator. So this is what the obelisk in the center of the city really kind of symbolizes. And it's a harnesser of power. It's a male dominated energy, a phallic symbol, progeny creator type of force that the obelisk has, even in the Kemetic mysteries or the Egyptian mysteries. So the empire of the city is essentially the British Empire, or more accurately, the forces behind the British Empire of the past. And this is some varying views here, and we'll get into some other views. The empire asserts its control over its colonies, such as the U.S., Canada, Australia, the European Union, through complicated means. One of their means of control is to have agents of their cause in high places of influence. This cabal of powerful manipulators is collectively known as the Illuminati, the shadow government, the Omega Agency, the government within the government, and so on. It does not matter what they are called. They are there and have been actively and legislatively writing away our freedoms, and have also been working towards the New World Order, or the One World Order, or the globalization. Examples of this are the Patriot Act, H.R. Bill 1955, the National Defense Authorization Act, the European Union Constitution, the Security and Prosperity Partnership, and the Transatlantic Partnership Pact. Okay, the TPP. The agents of the shadow government meet in secret once a year in what has come to be called the Bilderberg Group. The Bilderberg Group has met in secret since the early 50s, and since many of its attendees are media moguls, they have kept the information on the down low. But we're seeing more exposure of this Bilderberg meeting on pretty much even mainstream news. But if you're looking at like InfoWars and alternative news outlets, you're seeing that this is pretty much become more of a focus every time that they meet. People are just showing who's in attendance. So many, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Bushes, the Careys, the Heinzes. So you're seeing all these different families come together, and just meet on the direction that they're going to take the world in. Okay. So the Bilderberg group got its first newspaper mention in the early 80s. And it was not until the internet age that the Bilderberg Group became somewhat known. Attendees include, but are not limited to, royalty, world banksters, presidents, CEOs, so on and so forth. The Bilderberg Group meets once every year by renting out a hotel, 3 years in Europe, and every 4th year in North America. All right, so you see this. The agents of the shadow government are also part of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is independent from the U.S. government. Both the CFR and the Bilderberg Group were established upon Rockefeller funding. Okay, just for fun, you should see how many of those running for president in 2008 are CFR members, especially the media favorites. Another NWO group you could look up includes, but are not limited to, such as the Trilateral Commission, the Skull and Bones Society, and the Bohemian Grove Club, which includes many influential men, including presidents, and engages in the worship of the owl idol Molech. Okay, so that's also been exposed as well. So you can't really say this is conspiracy theory stuff. We know about Skull and Bones, the Trilateral Commission. All these things are very, very real and powerful in their movements. And if you're familiar with the sign of, or the symbol or logo of the Council on Foreign Relations, it is a man riding a pale horse. Take a look at that. It's very interesting. So another means of control is through the world's central banks, and we went about this yesterday. Okay, we talked about that in very much detail. Contrary to popular belief, the Federal Reserve is not a part of the U.S. government. Okay, this is what I was talking about with 1913. It became a central bank. The only part that is federal about it is its name. It is a privately owned enterprise, or called the Creature from Jekyll Island. If you haven't heard that book, or Secrets of the Fed, okay, look those two books up. The Creature from Jekyll Island, and then Secrets of the Fed, and trace the money back, and you'll see how Nazi money started all this, okay? And this is really interesting because the world truly is run by Nazis today, whether we know it or not. They did not lose World War II. And in fact, the Vatican had a huge role to play in the Fourth Reich, which was a Third Reich, which was an extension of the First Reich, which again was the Holy Roman Empire. So these are nothing but Roman imperial attempts to globalize the world, okay? So it is a privately owned enterprise, and so is the Bank of England. These are Rothschild-owned banks, and every central bank out there, including the World Bank, the IMF, all these are private, okay? Interestingly enough, all of these private central banks are owned by largely the same group of people. This group of people includes, but is not limited to, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Warburgs, and their interests. Essentially, what they have is a monopoly on money, and they all pretty much fall under the Rothschilds. Okay, that's pretty much the head of the serpent we had talked about yesterday. We're not going to get into much more of this particular article. It's interesting. We can get into the extension of it, but I want to get into more of the identity of it. So let's kind of get some other things clear and understood. We're going to read another article, again called The Empire of the City. Again, the city-states of the Vatican, the District of Columbia, the City of London, they form one interlocking empire. These three city-state corporations, they're corporations, that means they're fictitious entities, okay, control the world economically through the City of London, the corporation, through the City of London Corporation, they control the world militarily, through D.C., and spiritually through the Vatican. They pay no taxes, they're under no national authority, they have their own independent flag, they have their own separate laws, they have their own police force, and they have totally independent identities from the rest of the world. With D.C. in the U.S., President Obama, Barack Obama, as others before him, operates as their vassal king, okay, taking orders from the City of London through the Royal Institute of International Affairs. He is also a member of the Bar Association, which again, the Bar stands for the British Accredited Registry, being a trained lawyer by trade, okay? And the whole system of law functions under the Crown, which is the British Accredited Registry, which is a corporation. We'll read that in a little bit, okay? So the Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporation known as the United States, a corporation which was a corporate government for the District of Columbia, a corporate government. And you can look this up in their U.S. codes, okay? The Treasonous Act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside the best interest of American citizens. I want to kind of expound on that, then I'm going to come back to the United States some more. So like the United States was officially, the United States, or the District of Columbia, was officially created on land ceded by several Catholic colonies of Virginia and Maryland in 1790 as the first act of the American Constitution. So when 1790, like I said, took place with the lands ceded to the government of the United States by these Catholic colonies of Virginia and Maryland, Virgin Mary, okay, they're Virgin Mary worshipers. You put an obelisk in the center of this womb, in the middle of Virgin Mary, and they're harnessing all this energy, okay? This is a hugely occultic, Masonic layout of DC, and it is satanic in its layout. I'm gonna put a video on here for you all to watch about that. Okay, but this was the first act of the American Constitution when they ceded this land to the United States government. And notice before that the government was initially established in Philadelphia. Okay, and so when they moved it from Philly to DC, it was very strategic because on this Thames or Tiber River, the Potomac, excuse me, you have Georgetown University as well, which is a Jesuit institution. And guess who rolls or controls the policy in D.C. but the Jesuits? We'll get to that in another article. And I'll just post it on here. I'll post it on here. So F. Tupper Saucer reports in his book, Rulers of Evil. What? The American government Roman Catholic from the beginning? Uh-oh. Consider, the land known today as the District of Columbia bore the name Rome in a 1663 property record. So what we know as DC today was once called Rome. And if you look at St. Peter's Square or Capitolina Hill, and you look at Capitol Hill, it's a staggering resemblance between the two. Staggering. Okay, I'll post a link on that. Just notating it. So in 1663 property records, it's shown and known today that the District of Columbia bore the name Rome, and the branch of the Potomac River that bordered Rome on the south was called Tiber. This information was reported in the 1902 edition of the Catholic Encyclopedia article on Daniel Carroll. The article specifically declaring itself of interest to Catholics in the 1902 edition was deleted from the New Catholic Encyclopedia in 1967. Saucy adds in 1790, President George Washington, a Protestant, appointed Congressman Carroll to head a commission of 3 men to select land for the federal city called for in the Constitution. Of all places, the commission chose Rome, which at the time consisted of 4 farms, one of which belonged to Daniel Carroll. It was upon Carroll's farm that the new government chose to erect its most important building, the Capitol. Okay, so the kind of the Constitution was veiled. Few would perceive or even suspect what was truly behind the reason given for the popular consumption to form a more perfect union that had the Articles of Confederation. If not for the insisted upon Bill of Rights, liberty would have perished that day. Okay, and if you read what, we'll get to that anyway. 60 years later, when the secession movement swept through the South, threatening the empire's D.C. power center in the New World, the election leading up to the Civil War had one candidate who stumped vociferously for preserving the Union. The empire did not want to lose its foothold for total control in the New World, so stealthily backed the unwitting Abraham Lincoln, who was pressured to keep his pledge to preserve the Union at any cost, even at the cost of the lives of hundreds of thousands of America's fathers and sons. So it was never about slavery, okay? The children of Israel were never an issue. It was about preserving the Union. After the war, when Lincoln had turned his back on the money powers and genuinely sought to restore the South to equal footing and original intent of the Union, he had outlived his usefulness. Pop, pop, okay? This is when Wilkes Booth took him out. And he was a Roman Catholic convert, okay? So he was loyal to his Pope and only followed the orders he was given as a Jesuit. The post-war, post-assassination era was just the time of crisis that the empire needed to mold America into an image. Okay, read that in Revelation 13, into an image more to its liking. The first giant leap in the takeover of the free nation had just succeeded. With the consequent Reconstruction, the Fourth Amendment, and the Act of 1871, America would never be the same. Okay, the 14th Amendment made every person a slave. It enslaved everybody as a new form of citizen, which was a citizen of the United States, subject to its jurisdiction. Prior to that, individuals were citizens of the republic of the state from which they hailed. Okay, when they hailed, H-A-I-L-D, from which they were born. Okay, they were all state citizens. Now they became federal citizens, which completely changed the scope of their subjugation, I guess you could say, because they were no longer sovereign citizens. They were now subject to the federal government. Okay, the Act of 1871 is what made the United States a corporation or a corporate government. Okay,
a legal fiction, so to speak. This next giant leap would be the 1913 Federal Reserve coup of the United States Treasury and the introduction of the first world reserve currency, the Federal Reserve note, fiat currency. Okay, we talked about that yesterday. Its subsequent Great Depression and the numbering of all Americans through the Social Security system, the cause that began in America, has now spread to every nation on earth, a new world social economic order. The transformation of the American beast from lamb-like to dragon-like is today nearly ubiquitous. Okay, so that is the United States. I chose that first because that's where we live. Hey, let's look at it. Now let's look at the second beast, the city of London, or the second head, the city of London. Becoming a sovereign state in 1694 when King Wilhelm III of Orange privatized and turned the Bank of England over to private bankers. By 1812, Nathan Rothschild crashed the English stock market and scammed control of the Bank of England. Today, the city of London is the world's financial power center and the wealthiest square mile on the planet. It houses the Rothschilds controlled Bank of England, Lloyd's of London, the London Stock Exchange, all British banks, the branch offices of 384 foreign banks, the 70 USA banks, Fleet Street's newspaper and publishing monopolies, headquarters for worldwide Freemasonry, headquarters for the worldwide money cartel known as the Corporation. It's not a part of London or England or the British Commonwealth. Let's take a look at it through here. London's financial district is also a privately owned corporation or city-state located smack in the heart of Greater London. We read about King William III of Orange. Today, the city-state of London is the world's financial power center. It houses all those things we talked about. It has its own court. It has its own laws. It has its own flag, its own police force. It is not part of Greater London. The Crown is not the royal family or the British monarch. This is what I want to get to. The Crown is the private corporation of London. It has a council of 12 members who rule the corporation under a mayor called the mayor, the Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor and his 12-member council serve as proxies who sit in for 13 of the world's wealthiest, most powerful banking families. This ring of 13 families includes the Rothschilds family, the Warburg family, the Oppenheimer family, and the Schiff family. These families and their descendants run the Crown Corporation of London. The Crown Corporation holds the title to worldwide crown land and crown colonies like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The British Parliament and the British Prime Minister serve as a public front for these ruling crown families. All of these serve the Vatican and as a result have become very rich while maintaining their wealth. Domini dirigi nos, master direct us, is the motto of the City of London Corporation. There is no doubt in my mind who their master is, even as the scripture indicates, the dragon is their power. And last but not least, the Vatican City, Inc. The Vatican's colossal wealth includes enormous investments with the Rothschilds in Britain, France, and the USA, and with giant oil and weapons corporations like Shell, British Petroleum, and General Electric. The Vatican's solid gold bullion is worth billions and is stored in the Rothschild-controlled Bank of England and the USA Federal Reserve Bank. The Catholic Church is the biggest financial power, wealth accumulator, and property owner in existence, possessing more material wealth than any bank, corporation, giant trust, or government anywhere on the globe. The Pope, who is the visible ruler of this colossal global wealth, is one of the richest men on earth. The Black Pope is just as wealthy. The Superior General of the Society of Jesus, who is today Nicolas Adolfo Pacon. While 2/3 of the world earns less than $2 a day and 1/5 of the world is underfed or starving to death, the Vatican hoards the world's wealth, profits from its own stock market, and at the same time preaches about giving. During World War II, the Vatican was criticized for supporting Hitler and his Nazi regime. To this day, the Vatican is still under investigation for plundering Nazi gold from the Swiss bank accounts of Jewish Holocaust victims. Over the past 5 decades, more than 1,500 priests and bishops have been identified in the sexual assault of tens of thousands of boys and girls in their trusting congregations and orphanages. So why is this filthy, rich institution preaching spiritual values, property, chastity, while cardinals, priests, and bishops cover up their crimes of sexual abuse? Why has the church fought against and resisted the compensation claims of their sexually, emotionally, and spiritualized, traumatized victims? This is because they are no more than the beast. They are the beast, okay? And Babylon is fallen. If you haven't heard that one, go back and listen to that lesson, that teaching, because it is truly incredible what is going on in the common law court held by the people, okay? And we, the people, truly have to understand our power and understand how we can take the kingdom back as it was taken from us. And it's just through spiritual principles, okay? We can't wage war physically against these beasts, but spiritually we can wage war, okay? And just completely withdraw ourselves from it. Come out of her, my people. There's the mystery to the whole thing. Come out of her, my people. Okay, so more on the Vatican. The Catholic Church, the Vatican rules over more than 2 billion of the world's 6 billion people. The staggering wealth of the Vatican includes enormous investments with the Rothschilds in Britain, France, USA. The Vatican's solid gold bullion stored. We've heard about that. So, I mean, this is pretty much what's going on. The Vatican is the city of the Empire of the City. So you could just call it pretty much the Empire of the Vatican. But through the tripartite union, she fulfills every criterion of the revelation to qualify as Mystery Babylon. You will also notice that the city is singular in all its instances. This is more an indication of proof with the contemporary use in the description the empire of the city. These three locations, if not the entire world, are here to fulfill all the grandeur, evil, and catastrophe applied to the city Mystery Babylon. Little explanation is necessary when the required criteria are applied to the tripartite administration of the New World social economic order of the woman that rides the beast. It would be impossible to apply all these points to any one particular nation, even the United States, okay? So although geographically separated, the three city-states of the Vatican, Corporation of London, and the District of Columbia are one interlocking empire called the Vatican of the City. The flag of the District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. The tripartite union controls the world economically through London Square Mile Financial District, militarily through the District of Columbia, with the Vatican its head and spiritual as well as temporal seat for the Vicar of Christ on earth, who is the Pope and the Antichrist. 666, vicarious filii Dei. 666. Break it down to Roman numerals, it comes to 666. So, this is where we are, people. This is where we are. This is where we are. This is Revelation 17, closing out. And one of the 7 messengers who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me, saying to me, Come, I shall show you the judgment of the great whore sitting on many waters, with whom the sovereigns of the earth committed whoring, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her whoring. And he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast covered with names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup filled with the abominations and the filthiness of her whoring. And upon her head, her forehead, a name written, a secret, Babel the Great, the mother of the whores and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the set-apart ones and with the blood of the witnesses of Yahushua, and having seen her, I marveled, greatly marveled. And the messenger said to me, Why did you marvel, as the world is marveling after Pope Francis right now? Let me explain to you the secret of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was, and is not, and is about to come up out of the pit of the deep, and goes to destruction. And those dwelling on the earth, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, shall marvel when they see the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. You better pray your name is in the book of life. If not, you're going to fall to the deception of this beast. Here is the mind having wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay, so it's Capitolina Hill. And there are 7 sovereigns. 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he has to remain a little while. And the beast that was and is not, and is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and goes to destruction. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 sovereigns who have not yet received the reign, but receive authority as sovereigns with the beast for 1 hour. They have 1 mind, and they shall give their power and authority to the beast. They shall fight with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is master of masters and sovereign of sovereigns. And those with him are called and chosen and trustworthy. And he said to me, The waters which you saw where the horse sits are peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these shall hate the whore, and lay her waste and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For Elohim be given into their hearts to do his mind, to be of one mind, and to give their reign to the beast, until the words of Elohim shall be accomplished. And the woman whom you saw is that great city, having sovereignty over the sovereigns of the earth. There's something called concordance, and I'm going to post that on there as well. You want to look that up, and shows how the Roman Catholics, the Vatican, rules through civil law. They rule over all countries through civil law. And this is how we can really expose this beast for what it is and get into it a little more depth and understand who is marked by the beast. And we talked about the mark of the beast, okay? So these are the ways that this empire, this new Roman Empire, has been revived and expanded through time, okay? So it's going through